You're sitting in a treatment room. You're 12 years old, wearing your gymnastics leotard, and your mom is right there, 3 feet away, scrolling through her phone. The doctor walks in. White coat, kind smile. He's the guy who treats Olympic champions, the one parents fight to get their daughters in front of. He starts explaining medical terms you don't understand. Your mom nods along. She trusts him. You trust him. And what he does next? It's not medicine. It's not treatment. But your mom doesn't see it. The coaches don't question it. And when you try to tell someone years later, they don't believe you. Because how could someone who healed Olympians, someone the whole world respected, do something like that? That was the reality for over 500 young athletes.
Most channels hide the real details. I don't. My name is Troy, and I am here to get the full story. Every fact that actually matters. But YouTube won't show you the next case unless you're subscribed. If you don't hit that button now, this is the last video of mine you'll see. And the next case is even crazier than this one. So hit subscribe, then drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Let's continue.
In 1996, if you were a young gymnast with Olympic dreams, there was one name everyone wanted to hear. Dr. Larry Nassar. He wasn't just any sports medicine doctor. He was the guy, the one who worked with gold medalists, the one coaches sent their best athletes to, the one who parents trusted without question. Larry had started working with USA Gymnastics back in 1986. By the mid-90s, he was everywhere. Team doctor for the national squad, professor at Michigan State University's College of Osteopathic Medicine, the man who traveled to Olympics and World Championships. If you were hurt, if you were in pain, if you wanted to stay in the game, you went to Dr. Larry. And here's the thing. Larry looked the part. Glasses, receding hairline, soft-spoken. The kind of guy who'd blend into a crowd at the grocery store. He wasn't flashy. Didn't chase attention. Just quietly built his reputation as the doctor who understood athletes. The one who'd treat you for free if your family couldn't afford it. The one who'd see you after hours. The one who genuinely seemed to care. Parents loved him. He'd ask about school, about siblings, about life outside the gym. He'd remember birthdays, send encouraging messages before big competitions. To the outside world, Dr. Larry Nassar was exactly what a sports medicine doctor should be. Dedicated, compassionate, trustworthy. But Larry had a secret. A technique he claimed was cutting edge, revolutionary. Something he'd learned from his years of experience treating elite athletes. He called it pelvic floor therapy. Said it was essential for treating back pain, hip issues, anything related to the core. Made it sound so advanced that questioning it felt like questioning science itself. Here's how it would go down. A young gymnast would come in, complaining about back pain or hip soreness, which is totally normal for athletes who spent hours a day twisting their bodies into impossible positions. Larry would position them on the treatment table, sometimes face down, sometimes on their backs. And then he'd start talking. Medical terminology, complex explanations, things that sounded official but didn't quite make sense. And his hands would move, under the leotard, under the shorts, places that had nothing to do with a sore back. But he'd keep talking, keep explaining, acting like this was completely normal. Completely necessary. And because he was Dr. Larry, because he had the credentials, because he'd treated Olympic champions, nobody questioned it. Not the athletes, not the parents sitting right there in the room, not the coaches who sent girls to him week after week. To understand how Larry got away with it for so long, you have to understand elite gymnastics. This wasn't a sport. It was a lifestyle, a religion. Young girls, some barely old enough for middle school, training 30, 40 hours a week, being told their bodies weren't good enough, being weighed, being watched, being pushed past pain until pain became normal. Coaches ruled with absolute authority. If the coach said jump, you jumped. If coach said you were fat, you believed it. If coach said pain was weakness, you learned to suffer in silence. In that environment, questioning adults wasn't just discouraged. It was punished. So when Dr. Larry did his treatments, when something felt wrong, when that voice in the back of your head said this isn't right, you ignored it. Because you'd been trained to ignore your body. trained to push through discomfort, trained to trust the adults who promised they were making you better. And Larry? He understood that culture better than anyone. He knew these girls had been conditioned to obey, conditioned to accept pain, conditioned to never, ever complain. He weaponized everything about that world to build his own. The first warning came in 1997. A 16-year-old gymnast told her coach that Dr. Nassar's treatment made her uncomfortable, that something about it didn't feel right. The coach's response. She called Larry himself, asked him to explain his methods, and Larry, calm as ever, walked them through his medical technique. Made it sound so clinical, so professional, that the coach apologized for even bringing it up. The complaint disappeared, filed away, forgotten. 1 year later, another young woman went to Michigan State University Police, filed an official report, said Larry had done things that didn't seem medically necessary, that she felt violated. The university investigated, briefly, talked to Larry, looked at some documents he provided, and closed the case. Said his techniques were legitimate, said the complaint was unfounded. Larry went back to work like nothing happened. As the years went on, more reports came in. Quietly, carefully. 1998, 2000, 2004. Young women trying to speak up, trying to say something's not right. And every single time, the system protected Larry instead of them. In 2004, a parent emailed USA Gymnastics, said her daughter had an experience with Dr. Nassar that seemed inappropriate. The organization's president, Steve Penny, didn't call the police, didn't launch an investigation. He just made a note in a file. Then, in 2014, a Michigan State student named Amanda Tomashow filed a Title IX complaint, described what Larry had done in detail, how he'd touched her in ways that had nothing to do with the hip pain she came in for. The university still didn't conduct a proper investigation. They consulted Larry's colleagues instead. Many of them were his friends. They accepted his explanations, decided his techniques were medically appropriate. The investigator, a woman named Christine Moore, who had zero training in sexual assault cases, even let Larry demonstrate his method on her, said it proved everything was fine. Amanda's complaint was dismissed. Larry kept working. Kept treating athletes, kept collecting victims. What people didn't know, what nobody wanted to believe, was the scale. Larry wasn't just treating athletes at Michigan State. He was working with USA Gymnastics, seeing the country's best gymnasts. He was traveling to international competitions, Olympic trials, the actual Olympics. He had his own office, his own treatment room, unlimited, unsupervised access to hundreds of young girls every single year. And he used every bit of that access. Former patients would later estimate that through his roles at Michigan State, USA Gymnastics, and a local gymnastics club called Twistars, Larry treated over 1,000 athletes annually at his peak. Conservative estimates put his victim count at 265. There were girls who eventually came forward. There were others who stayed silent, who convinced themselves they'd misunderstood, who buried the memory so deep they almost forgot. Larry operated for over 20 years, from the early 1990s through 2016, 2 decades, and the entire time he maintained his reputation, the kind doctor, the dedicated professional, the man who just wanted to help athletes succeed. In the summer of 2016, a lawyer named Rachel Denhollander sat at her kitchen table in Kentucky, reading an article. The Indianapolis Star had published an investigation into USA Gymnastics, how the organization routinely dismissed allegations against coaches, how they'd silenced victims, how they'd prioritized reputation over safety. The article didn't mention Larry Nassar, but as Rachel read about USA Gymnastics' pattern of covering up problems, something clicked. She'd been 15 when Larry treated her. Back in 2000, she remembered the appointment, how his hands went places they shouldn't have gone, how he explained it away with medical terms, how she'd spent years convincing herself she must have been wrong, that she must have misunderstood. But now, reading about USA Gymnastics' systematic failures, she realized something. This wasn't about one confused girl misunderstanding a medical procedure. This was about an organization that had built an environment where predators could thrive. And if she didn't speak up, if she didn't take the risk of being dismissed, being called a liar, being dragged through the mud, Larry would keep hurting people. So Rachel made a decision. She was going to file a police report. She was going to tell her story publicly, and she was going to make sure people couldn't ignore it this time. While Rachel prepared her report, the Indianapolis Star journalists kept digging. They'd started investigating USA Gymnastics months earlier, following tips about coaches who'd been quietly moved from gym to gym despite allegations against them. The more they looked, the worse it got. USA Gymnastics had received at least 368 complaints about coaches over 2 decades. They'd only reported a handful to police. They kept secret files, paid settlements with non-disclosure agreements, did everything possible to keep problems quiet. And Larry's name kept appearing in their research. Whispers, allegations, stories from gymnasts who'd left the sport. In August 2016, the Star published their investigation, Out of Balance. The story detailed USA Gymnastics' systematic failure to protect athletes. It didn't name Larry specifically, but it described a longtime team doctor whose treatments had generated multiple complaints. Rachel recognized the description immediately. In September 2016, she filed her police report with Michigan State University Police, and this time, she didn't just describe what happened. She provided medical records, pointed out contradictions in Larry's charting, laid out a legal case so thorough that detectives couldn't ignore it. 2 detectives, Andrea Munford and Lieutenant Joseph Kavanaugh, took Rachel's case. They expected to close it quickly, maybe clear up a misunderstanding. Instead, they uncovered a nightmare. They got a warrant, searched Larry's house, and what they found confirmed everything. Thousands of images on hard drives, evidence he'd been collecting for years. They kept digging, pulled medical billing records, found that Larry had billed insurance for pelvic floor treatments on over 265 young athletes. Many of them hadn't even had pelvic injuries. They interviewed more survivors, and with each interview the pattern became clearer. Larry had been doing this for decades, hiding behind his medical license, using his position at Michigan State and USA Gymnastics as cover, counting on people not to believe teenage girls over a respected doctor. In December 2016, Larry Nassar was arrested. Not for what he'd done to athletes. Not yet. First, they charged him with the images they found. Federal charges, 20 years minimum. But as the investigation continued, as more survivors came forward, the full scope of his crimes emerged, and the world started paying attention. After Larry's arrest, something remarkable happened. Survivors started finding each other. It began small, a few former gymnasts connecting through social media, sharing stories, realizing they weren't alone, that it wasn't just them, that dozens, then hundreds of others had experienced the same thing. In October 2017, Olympic gold medalist Michaela Maroney published a statement, described being treated by Larry at 13 years old. At the Tokyo Olympics, how she'd tried to tell adults and been dismissed. Within days, more Olympians came forward. Ali Reisman, Simone Biles, Gabby Douglas, Jordan Weber. The women who'd become America's heroes, the faces of USA Gymnastics' greatest triumphs, all revealed they'd been victimized by the organization's most trusted doctor. The survivors organized, created support networks, coordinated their testimonies, prepared to face Larry in court and tell the world exactly what he'd done. Larry's sentencing hearing began in January 2018. Judge Rosemary Aquilina made a decision. Every survivor who wanted to give a victim impact statement could speak. No time limits, no restrictions. Over 7 days, 156 women stood before the court. Some were Olympic champions. Some were young girls who'd never made it past local competitions. But all of them had the same story. The trusted doctor who'd violated them under the guise of medical treatment. the system that had failed them, the adults who hadn't listened. Kyle Stevens went first. She'd been 6 years old when Larry started abusing her. He was a family friend. When she finally told her parents, they didn't believe her, made her apologize to him. Her father later died by suicide when he realized the truth. She looked at Larry and said, "Little girls don't stay little forever. They grow into strong women that return to destroy your world." Ali Reisman told Larry, "The tables have turned. We are here, we have our voices, and we are not going anywhere." One by one, they spoke. Some cried. Some were angry. Some were heartbreakingly composed. And Larry sat there, required to listen to every single word. On January 24, 2018, Judge Aquilina sentenced Larry Nassar to 40 to 175 years in prison, added to his 60-year federal sentence for the images. It was effectively a life sentence. "I just signed your death warrant," Judge Aquilina told him. But the sentence was just the beginning. USA Gymnastics faced a reckoning. The entire board resigned. The organization filed for bankruptcy, eventually settled with survivors for $380 million. Michigan State University, which had employed Larry for decades and dismissed multiple complaints, settled for $500 million. The U.S. Olympic Committee faced consequences too. The FBI was investigated for their mishandling of the case. They'd received reports in 2015 but delayed investigating for over a year. During that delay, Larry abused at least 70 more young athletes. The FBI eventually settled with survivors for $138.7 million. Steve Penny, USA Gymnastics' former CEO, was arrested for tampering with evidence. The organization's former president was charged. Coaches who'd sent girls to Larry faced lawsuits. The entire system that had protected one man for so long was finally being held accountable. Larry Nassar is currently serving his sentence in a federal prison in Florida. In 2023, he was attacked by another inmate. Stabbed multiple times, he survived. But the survivors, they're still living with what he did. Some left gymnastics forever. Some struggled with relationships, with trust, with believing their own instincts. Some spent years in therapy trying to reconcile how someone they trusted, someone their parents trusted, someone the whole world trusted, could have hurt them so deliberately. The settlements, the prison sentence, the institutional changes, none of it undoes what happened. None of it gives back the years they spent thinking they were crazy, thinking they'd imagined it, thinking nobody would believe them. And the question that haunts everyone who knows this story: how many others are out there right now? How many people in positions of trust, wearing the right credentials, saying the right things, are doing the same thing Larry did? Larry Nassar thought his credentials would protect him forever. He was wrong. If this story disturbed you, drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into cases like this. And remember, if something feels wrong, if someone in authority is making you uncomfortable, speak up, tell someone, keep telling people until someone listens. Because silence only protects predators. Your voice has power. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there.